Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with another My 2 Cent one. And for this one, we're going to be taking a look at what I thought about Nintendo's E3's 2021 presentation, though. If you're interested in what I thought about Microsoft's, though, you could click. I'll have a link in the description down below, and you could click on it though, and I'll give you my thoughts about the Microsoft one though. But before we begin with that though, I do want to do a quick My 2 Cent though, and these are two stories that sort of caught my attention when I was out and all, and I thought these were actually kind of interesting. One I thought never would make its way over to the Nintendo Switch, and another one is taking the series into a different direction. The first one is that apparently Kingdom Come Deliverance is actually coming to the Nintendo Switch. Now this is interesting because no one thought this was going to come to Nintendo Switch. At first they came out as like, oh, it was an error, that's not real or anything like that. And now learning that they actually bringing the game to the Nintendo Switch is pretty amazing. Not to mention we're learning that Saber Interactive is going to be handling the port though. Now, as much as I am excited about this game, I am somewhat a little bit concerned though. Most of it is because I've heard stories of how the game was originally ported over to the PS4 and Xbox One, and how that version struggled a bit though. I've heard stories about even on PC, although I'm not a PC expert, so I don't know if that's 100% true or not though, although they kind of patched the game to make it work and all. And I am kind of a little mixed with Saber Interactive handling it though. On one hand, they did handle what many thought was impossible, porting over Witcher 3 Wild Hunt to the Nintendo Switch. Granted, it may not be the version for everyone though, but still, it's pretty amazing how they brought that game over. But on the other hand, they are also the same ones that handled last year's Crisis Remastered, which, well, when it was revealed, it didn't exactly sit very well with everyone. And the Switch version, though not terrible, there were certainly some issues, although they have sort of patched that game up. So I'm kind of curious to see how they are going to handle this version, and whether or not it's going to be download only, whether there will be a physical version, or is it going to be the cloud version though, which I'm sure not everyone is everyone would be pleased with that, but time will tell. But either way, Kingdom Come Deliverance is coming to the Nintendo Switch. And last but not least, we learned that there will be another entry in the Metal Slug series, and this one is called Metal Slug Tactics. Tactics. Apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly though. Basically, it looks like it takes sort of a page out of what the Advance Wars series though. More on that in my E3 talk on it though. And based on what they showed, especially with some of the smallest gameplay though, it looks very interesting though. I mean, I personally would have preferred the old school run and gun 2D Metal Slug games, but this definitely does look nice though. As of right now, the game is currently scheduled to come to the PC. Supposedly it's up on the Steam page. So no word on a console version at this time, though. However, given the fact that it's being handled by the same studio that did last year's excellent Streets of Rage 4, not to mention they are handling publishing the upcoming Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, which is being developed by the same folks who did Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, though, I would say odds are there is a very good chance we could see this come to the home consoles. And I could see this coming on the PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, PS5, and of course the Nintendo Switch. So I do think that there's a good chance Metal Slug Tactics there will be a console version though. So I believe that there's a good chance we'll see that happen. But as of right now, and as of where everything stands at the moment though, it seems to be heading towards PC at that moment though. Okay, with the quick My 2 Cent part now done though, I'm going to be talking about, say, Nintendo's E3 2021 though. Now, Nintendo is in a very good position as where they are right now though, compared to where they were during the Wii U era. The Switch, whether you love it or hate it, has been very successful for Nintendo, and it seems to be doing very well, despite basically the new consoles that have come out, you know, the Xbox Series S and X and the PS5 and all. So they were certainly going into E3 in a strong positions, but we've seen in the past how Nintendo can sometimes blow it though. And after how Microsoft was able to present their presentation though, there was concern in how Nintendo was going to handle theirs. And after seeing their presentation, I would say this. It may not have been as long as Microsoft though, and I won't go as far as saying it overtook Microsoft's E3 presentation, but I will say that they certainly were the second best thing to see at E3 2021 at a time when, well, not everything was great in terms of E3 2021 in general, outside of Microsoft and Nintendo. So we'll get started with part one, and that is what I like though. And the first one I do want to talk about is the fact that they are bringing a new Super Monkey Ball game called Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania though. For what I understand, this is probably, I think, and although I could be wrong, it's basically the first and second Super Monkey Ball games back during the GameCube era coming to the Nintendo Switch. It's also going to be available on other systems as well, and that is certainly nice indeed. I mean, the Super Monkey Ball games in general are excuse me, are fun, and basically they kind of remind me of the NES game Marble Madness to a certain degree. So great to see this series is getting another shot. I believe there's already one on the Nintendo Switch, so this will probably be the second one on the Nintendo Switch in general though, but either way, looking forward to that one though. The next one they have announced is another entry in the WarioWare series called WarioWare Get It Together, and the WarioWare games in general are fun indeed. They're mini games, but enjoyable mini games. Indeed, and some of them are ranged into the silly category though. What's interesting is supposedly this will have a 2-player mode, which is certainly is nice though. I mean, personally, I would have loved to see another entry in the Wario Land series. That would be great. Hell, I would settle with a port of Wario Land Shake It onto Nintendo Switch if that happens though. But either way, it's nice to see Wario getting his own, seeing Wario starring his own game and all that stuff. So WarioWare Get It Together is definitely a smaller title, but still enjoyable, indeed, enjoyable nevertheless. The next one obviously is Shin Megami Tensei 5, if I'm saying the right name though, and honestly, that game looks good and all that stuff. This is one that we've been waiting for a while, ever since it was announced for the Nintendo Switch, and we finally got to see some gameplay of it, and it looks really nice. I definitely like some of the gameplay mechanics that they showed, which is kind of similar to what was in Tokyo Mirage Session, although Tokyo Mirage Session was inspired by, Shin Megami Tensei and the Persona series, so it's definitely nice Aulx is able to bring this game over. Hopefully it does well enough that maybe it will convince them to bring other Aulx games over to the Nintendo Switch, but either way, Shin Megami Tensei 5 is definitely one I am looking forward towards though. Not to mention, Shin Megami Tensei 3 is now out on the Nintendo Switch, so that's something that keeps Shin Megami Tensei fans occupied for a bit. The next one, and this one was kind of a bit of a surprise though, and that is Strange Brigade is making its way over to the Nintendo shop, into the Nintendo eShop. There's only a digital version, no physical version at this time. Basically, it's made by the same folks who handled the Sniper Elite series and the Zombie Army trilogy, which is certainly nice though. I played this game before, and it was definitely a fun game, sort of like a Indiana Jones-like approach to it to a certain degree, so it's definitely worth keeping an eye out. Worth pointing out, though, that it's, like I said, it's eShop only, though. The next one is Astra Ascending, if I'm saying the name correctly, though. What they showed is certainly nice, though. It's made by some of the folks who worked on the Final Fantasy series, so this is definitely one I'll be keeping an eye out, though. Supposedly, I know it's coming to other systems, though, but I'm definitely looking forward to this one on the Nintendo Switch. The next one is, and this one is sort of a surprise as well, is that the Advance War series is coming back under the name Advance War 1+2 Reboot Camp. And judging by what they showed, though, it definitely looks nice, considering the fact that we now know that WayForward, the same folks who've done the Shantae series, though, is helping and developing this game, which definitely looks nice indeed. I'm hoping this game does well enough that perhaps maybe it will convince them to not only bring in other entries of the Advance series, but maybe convince Nintendo to look at other series that they have ignored, like why not bring the Golden Sun series back, though? One thing I do want to point out about Advance Wars that I would like to see, and I know some might disagree with me on this, I would like to see sort of a casual mode in Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. And what I mean by that is sort of similar to what we've seen in Fire Emblem's series lately, where they have a normal mode and a casual mode. The casual mode in Fire Emblem is that if your character is defeated on the battlefield, they'll reappear again at the end of that battle and all that stuff, compared to in normal mode where if they're defeated, they won't come back at all. So I would like to see a casual mode in some form, in some capacity, though. Again, I know it's not for everyone, but I certainly don't have a problem with that if that does exist, though. So, great that Advance Wars 1-2 Reboot Camp is happening. Excuse me. The next one I do want to talk about is one that also surprised me is Fatal Frame, Maiden of Dark Water. Now, this one's kind of interesting because basically this was originally released on the Wii U, but only in the digital version here in the West, though. Not to mention, there was some controversy over the costumes that they had, where Japan had a little bit more of a risque costume, where compared over here in the West, we had the Samus and Princess Zelda outfit and all that. But in either way, though, it's nice to see this game is getting another shot, though. I'm looking forward to this one coming to the Nintendo Switch. Although, interestingly enough, it's going to be on other systems as well, which is kind of interesting in a way, considering the fact that supposedly Nintendo owns some rights to the Fatal Frame series. So I'm curious to see if maybe Koei Tecmo and Nintendo worked out some sort of deal, such as, hey, we'll fund the Switch version. If you want to bring it to other systems, that's fine, but you'll have to get someone else to fund it because we won't fund those versions. So I'm curious to see what kind of deal was worked out to make this happen. But either way, it's nice to see the Fatal Frame series make a return. It's nice to see this game get another shot, considering that it was released on the Wii at the Wii U at a time when the system wasn't exactly great, in a good spot. Hopefully, this opens the door to maybe bringing the Wii version of Fatal Frame 2 and Fatal Frame 3 over here to the West. Maybe work out some of the controls here and there, though. I mean, if you could work out the controls for this game that relied on the Wii U gamepad, I'm sure you could find a way to make it work on the Nintendo Switch. So hopefully this means that the other entries will make their way to the Switch, and hopefully this means that we'll see future entries into the Fatal Frame series. The next thing I do want to talk about is, and this one is the big highlight for me though, and that is Metroid Dread. For Metroid fans, we've been waiting a long time for this game, though. This game has been rumored for such a long time. There were reports of it originally supposed to be for the Nintendo DS, until that got canceled and all that stuff. And Metroid, let's just say, has been sort of in its highs and its lows, though. Some of its lows was Metroid Other M, although I don't hate that game as much as the internet likes to make it sound like it is. And then, of course, you had Metroid Federation Force, which didn't exactly... Well, let's put it this way. If it was a different game, not set in the Metroid universe, perhaps it would have fared better, but because it was set in the Metroid universe, I could see why not everyone was a fan of it, though. But then, of course, we had Mercury System did a remake of Metroid 2 Return of Samus called Metroid Samus Return, which was definitely a good game indeed. Sadly, it was on the Nintendo 3DS at a time when, well, let's just say the Switch was starting to gain momentum, though, although I wouldn't mind that game ported over to the Nintendo Switch. But in either way, though, it's nice to see that they're bringing the Metroid series back, though. It's not Metroid Prime 4, but this is the next best thing, though. One thing they do like to point out that I have heard is that this is sort of a conclusion of the Metroid games that have happened so far, which does make you kind of wonder, where do they take the series from going on from there? What direction can they take Samus at that point? So I'm very curious to see what happens, especially after those who beat Metroid Dread, though. Where does the series go from there? Did they call it something else? Do they call it something that's not Metroid? Is it called like Samus Adventures or something like that? So I'm a little curious to see what direction this will go following the events of Metroid Dread. But in either way, though, Dread is definitely on my radar, and I'm definitely looking at picking this game up. The next one are two other games that I'm looking forward to as well. One is Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, though. This one is another one I'm looking forward to because I loved Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, though. That was a fun game, though. It borrowed a bit from the XCOM series, which certainly isn't a bad thing, with its own twists and take. Plus, I felt like it finally used the rabbits for something outside of basically, being reduced to nothing more than a mini-game collection. So this one definitely looks nice. We got to see Rabbit Rosalia, which makes me kind of wonder what kind of ability Rosalia will have in this game, though. It definitely, some people saying, kind of gives off a bit of a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe, which to some degree I kind of agree with that, though. But either way, Mario plus Rabbids Stars of Hope, that's definitely on my radar, though. And of course, Monster Hunter Stories 2, though. Given how well Monster Hunter Rise has done so far, it does make you kind of wonder, could we see Monster Hunter Stories 2 gain that kind of success, though? It's definitely another game I am looking forward to on the Nintendo Switch, indeed. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, and these are what I didn't like / mix, what didn't really click with me as much. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my video on the Nintendo E3 2021 presentation. So now that I told you what I personally like, though, we'll get started with part 2, and these are the ones that, well, part of me I'm kind of mixed on this, and part of me don't really like what they showed, though. The first one I do want to talk about is the Guardians of the Galaxy game, though. Now, when I heard they were bringing this over to the Nintendo Switch, I was kind of surprised to see that Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics were going to bring this game over to the Nintendo Switch, until I learned the fact that it's going to be the cloud version, indeed. And I know cloud gaming is sort of a little bit iffy at this time, though. I'm not saying it doesn't have potential, it does, but I still think there are some hurdles to be overcome before cloud gaming becomes the new norm, though. And for what I've been reading some of the comments, though, not everyone is thrilled with the fact that it's the cloud version. Others feel like Nintendo should have been upfront about, I shouldn't say Nintendo, or somewhat them, but they should have pointed out that this was the cloud version when they put the trailer up for Guardians of the Galaxy in general, though. And putting aside the fact that this is the cloud version, though, for just 1 second, though, I have concerns about this game anyway, though, and my concern is the fact that it's handled by the studio that did a great job with the Avengers and all, and that game didn't exactly sit very well with everyone, though. The reports are that the player basis is down and all that, so I'm a little concerned about Guardians of the Galaxy in general. Do I think the game could be good? I mean, it's a possibility. Supposedly they're focusing on a single-player experience, which certainly does make this game a bit more interesting now than the whole live service approach. But even so, it's still handled by the same studio that handled the Avengers game, so I'm a little iffy at this excuse me, a little bit iffy at this time, and being this is the cloud version, I'm very iffy about it even being on the Nintendo Switch. So I'm sort of concerned about with Guardians of the Galaxy, though, but I'm not going to go out and write the game off yet. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for the time being, but I do have concerns, especially after how the Avengers have been handled, though. The next one is about Mario plus Rabbids and Monster Hunter Stories 2. Now, I'm not saying these games are necessarily bad or anything like that. I'm looking forward to these games indeed and all. But when they announced it on the Nintendo E3 presentation, it kind of lost some of its charm, or a little bit of its wow factor. Some of this has to do with the fact that Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope was announced earlier, before Nintendo's E3 presentation, basically showed at the Ubisoft Forward presentation, and some people felt that was probably the only bright spot from Ubisoft's Forward. So it really kind of loses some of its wow factor. Same with Monster Hunter Stories 2. I mean, we've seen enough information about this game, though, that I'm not sure it needed to be in entirely into this direct or anything like that, though. I mean, I guess it's there for a refresher, though, but I just feel like they could have put other games in there that could have been put on that space, though. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad they announced Mario plus Rabbids and all, but the fact that it was announced at Ubisoft's Forward, it just loses some of its like wow factor, like I mentioned, and same with Monster Hunter Stories 2. Nevertheless, I'm still looking forward to those games, though. The next one, of course, is that there was no comments made as regard to Bayonetta 3 or Metroid Prime 4. Although it is worth pointing out, Metroid Prime 4 was somewhat mentioned, though, before they showed off Metroid Dread, though. So it's obviously clear they're still working on it, though, but it's also clear it might be a while until we see the game and all that stuff, though. I mean, I'm sure most of you are aware of the whole situation surrounding Metroid Prime 4. Supposedly, it was supposed to handle by Aulx Studio, though. There were rumors that Bandai Namco was working on the game until it was clear that it was not going to meet the expectation that basically Nintendo wanted. So they started the game from scratch, had Retro Studio handle it, though, and they came out and sort of apologized about it, though. Now, I will applaud Nintendo the fact that they were willing to apologize for the way Metroid Prime 4 was handled, but at the same time, I felt like they wasted so much time on this game that why didn't they just let Retro handle the game in the first place? So it's a little bit unfortunate we didn't see Metroid Prime 4 or even a new trailer for it, though. Glad that they somewhat mentioned it, but a little disappointed on that. Same with Bayonetta 3. That game, we don't know what the hell is going on with it, though. And most recently, though, we had Hideki Kamiya and Bill Trinh from Nintendo speak out. Hideki Kamiya really went after folks who keep constantly asking the question about that, though. And while I understand his frustration, I feel that in some ways he kind of creates a situation that allows this to happen, considering his history of trolling and also blocking people on his Twitter account. Meanwhile, Bill Trinh has came out recently saying how the game is still in development and it's much further along than people imagine, and that we should stay tuned and all that stuff, which sounds great, except that we've heard this story many times, though. As the old saying goes, action speaks louder than words. You could claim Bayonetta 3 is going well, but if we're not seeing anything, not even like gameplay footage or anything like that, it does raise questions about whether or not if there's some issues with that game. And after how Babylon Falls was shown at Square Enix event and how that went to a live service co-op, and that didn't exactly sit very well with everyone, though. I can understand why some people are kind of concerned with Bayonetta 3 at this time. So, yeah, the fact that there was no Metroid Prime 4, though somewhat mentioned, and no Bayonetta 3 is somewhat of a disappointment, though, and especially with Bayonetta 3, there's some concerns about that game, especially after what we saw from Square Enix with Babylon Fall, though, if I'm saying the name correctly, though. And last but not least, though, we had the Zelda 35th anniversary, though, and to me, it was somewhat disappointed, but not disappointed, not hugely disappointed, though. On one hand, though, they did show off Breath of the Wild 2, although I expect the name's going to be something different, though. And judging by some of the gameplay footage that they showed, though, it looks as though it definitely is getting a Skyward Sword vibe out of it, which explains why The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is coming out, though. And they supposedly are aiming for a 2022 release date, though. Now, whether or not Nintendo can maintain that release date or not, remains to be seen. It'll be interesting when in 2022 it will come out. Perhaps on the same day that the first Breath of the Wild come out. I mean, that's a possibility, but who knows, though. At the same time, what they showed for their 35th anniversary was kind of a little bit of a dud in a way, though. I mean, other than Skyward Sword for the Switch and Breath of the Wild 2, some of the stuff they showed was like basically the Game & Watch, the Game & Watch basically with The Legend of Zelda. Although I will admit, though, this looks a bit better than the Mario Brothers one. This one actually has 4 games compared to the Mario Brothers, which has 1 game, though. But still, it wasn't really huge or anything like that. I think most people wanted to see something like a similar to what we saw with a Super Mario 3D All Stars basically be shown, and we really didn't get that though. And I do feel it's kind of a missed opportunity on Nintendo's side, because I would have liked to see maybe a Wind Waker or Twilight Princess games be ported over to the Nintendo Switch. Now, it's possible Nintendo could be waiting to announce that game. I mean, that's a possibility, though. I don't think 3D All-Stars was shown at E3. Then again, I'm pretty sure they were planning to, but, you know, obviously last year with COVID and all, that kind of threw that out the window, though. So it's possible they could announce it, though, at some point before the end of the year. That's a possibility, though. But in either case, though, I am kind of a little bit disappointed with what they'd showed for their digital presentation in regards of the Zelda 35th anniversary, outside of, you know, more gameplay footage of Breath of the Wild 2, though. Overall, I would say this presentation was definitely good. I won't go as far as saying it was good as, say, 2017's presentation or 2019's presentation, but it wasn't terrible either, though. There were some pretty good announcements, though. Some of the games that Metroid Dread was probably the biggest surprise for me, though. Hearing Mario and Rabbids, a new sequel, is certainly nice, though. Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp and Fatal Frame Maiden of Dark Water are getting a second chance in life on the Nintendo Switch. That certainly is nice indeed. So there were some pretty good announcements that Nintendo made during their E3 presentation, though. But at the same time, I felt like games like Mario plus Rabbids, as much as I'm looking forward to it, kind of lost a little bit of its, like I said, wow factor, because it was already announced at Ubisoft Forward. Same with Monster Hunter Story 2, though. Again, the Guardians of the Galaxy game could be good, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And being that it's a cloud version is sort of might turn some people off, though. The fact that they didn't have any new info on Bayonetta 3 is somewhat of a disappointment and a concerns about that game. Same with Metroid Prime 4, although they somewhat mentioned that, though. And the presentation for the Zelda 35th anniversary was kind of a disappointment, at least for me, outside of what they showed for basically Breath of the Wild 2. So not everything was perfect, though, but I will say that this was still a good presentation. Not the greatest presentations they've done, but definitely a solid one, though, and I can see why many people view this and Microsoft as probably the best thing for E3 2021. Although, in terms of who had the most viewerships, though, apparently it seems that Nintendo had a bit more viewerships, followed by Microsoft in second place. So that's kind of interesting indeed, though. So either way, though, I thought Nintendo's presentation was good. I won't go as far as saying it took Microsoft, though, but I don't deny the fact that it was certainly solid, and there were some pretty good announcements that they made during their 40-minute E3 presentation. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video, or my thoughts on Nintendo's E3 2021 presentation. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Nintendo's E3 2021 presentation? Did you like what they showed? Did you not like what they showed? Were there certain games that you were pleased that they announced, such as like Metroid Dread, Fatal Frame Maiden of Dark Water, Advance Wars 1 plus 2 Reboot Camp, Monster Hunter Stories 2, Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope? Were there certain games you were disappointed that they didn't talk about, like Bayonetta 3 or Metroid Prime 4 in any way? Did you by any chance watch the Nintendo Treehouse? Do you agree with what I said? Did you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, excuse me, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!